Good night, Malaysian 370. These were the last words anyone ever heard from flight MH370. March 8, 2014. A Boeing 777 carrying 239 people took off from Kuala Lumpur, heading to Beijing. It never arrived. No mayday call, no distress signal, no wreckage for over a year. The plane simply vanished. And 10 years later, we still don't know why. This is the story of the greatest aviation mystery in history. March 8, 2014. 12:41 a.m. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 departed from Kuala Lumpur International Airport. Destination, Beijing, China. Flight time, roughly 6 hours. A routine red-eye flight. On board, 227 passengers and 12 crew members. People from 14 different countries. Families going on vacation. Business travelers heading to meetings. Students returning to university. A group of Chinese calligraphy artists heading home from an exhibition. The captain was Zaharieh Ahmad Shah, a 53-year-old veteran pilot with over 18,000 flying hours. He loved aviation so much that he built a flight simulator in his own home. The first officer was Farik Abdul Hamid, 27 years old, young and ambitious, on one of his final training flights before full certification on the Boeing 777. Nothing about this flight seemed unusual. The weather was clear. The aircraft, a Boeing 777-200ER, was one of the safest planes ever built. In 18 years of service, not a single 777 had ever been lost to an in-flight accident. At 1:01 a.m., the plane reached its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. Everything was normal. And then, it wasn't. At 1:19 a.m., just 38 minutes after takeoff, Malaysian Air Traffic Control contacted the plane for the last time. The instruction was simple. Contact Ho Chi Minh City Air Traffic Control as MH370 crossed into Vietnamese airspace. The response from the cockpit: "Good night, Malaysian 370. A perfectly normal, calm reply. Nothing unusual in the voice. No hint of panic, no hint of anything. But here's where everything changes. The plane never contacted Ho Chi Minh City, ever. At 1:21 a.m., just 2 minutes after that final radio call, MH370's transponder was switched off. A transponder is the device that tells air traffic control exactly where a plane is, how fast it's flying, and its altitude. Turning it off doesn't happen by accident. You have to physically reach for it and switch it off manually. Without the transponder, MH370 disappeared from civilian radar. But that's not all. Shortly after, the plane's ICAO system also stopped transmitting. A CARS is an automated system that sends technical data about the aircraft, engine performance, altitude, speed, back to the airline on the ground. It was either switched off or disabled. In the span of just a few minutes, someone on that plane deliberately made it invisible. And then MH370 did something no one expected. Military radar would later reveal that at 1:21 a.m., the aircraft made a sharp left turn, deviating completely from its planned route to Beijing. Instead of heading northeast toward China, the plane turned west, flying back across the Malay Peninsula. It flew across Malaysia. Then it turned northwest, flying along the border between Malaysian and Thai airspace, as if deliberately staying in the gap between two countries' radar coverage. Then it turned again, heading south over the Andaman Sea. And then it was gone. No radar, no communication, no trace. Here's the terrifying part. Nobody noticed the plane was missing for over 4 hours. When MH370 didn't contact Ho Chi Minh City as expected. Vietnamese air traffic control waited and waited. They assumed it was a communication error. They tried calling the plane. No response. They contacted Kuala Lumpur. Kuala Lumpur tried calling the plane. No response. Back and forth. Confusion. Delays. Bureaucratic hesitation. It wasn't until 5:30 a.m., more than 4 hours after the plane vanished, that anyone officially declared that MH370 was missing. 4 hours. In 4 hours, a Boeing 777 can fly over 2,000 miles in any direction. Think about that. By the time the world realized something was wrong, the plane could have been almost anywhere on Earth. At 6:32 a.m., flight MH370 was supposed to land in Beijing. It didn't. At Beijing Capital International Airport, families waited at the arrivals gate, holding signs with names, checking the board, watching the status change from on time to delayed, and then to nothing. No explanation, no announcement, just silence. And then the news broke. Malaysia Airlines released a statement. "We have lost contact with flight MH370. In the terminal, family members collapsed, screaming, crying, holding each other, refusing to believe what they were hearing. 239 people. Gone. What followed was the largest and most expensive search operation in aviation history. 26 countries joined the effort. Hundreds of ships, dozens of aircraft, satellites repositioned to scan the ocean. But there was a massive problem. Nobody knew where to look. At first, search teams focused on the South China Sea, the area where the plane was supposed to be flying. Nothing. Then, Malaysian authorities revealed the military radar data, showing the plane had turned west, then south. The entire search had been looking in the wrong place. But where exactly did the plane go after it disappeared from military radar? This is where the story gets even more bizarre. A British satellite company called Inmarsat discovered something extraordinary. Even after all communication was shut off, one system on the plane was still technically alive. The aircraft's satellite communication unit had continued to send automatic handshake signals to an Inmarsat satellite every hour. These signals didn't contain any location data, no coordinates, no messages, just a simple electronic ping saying, "I'm still here." 7 pings over 7 hours. Using incredibly complex calculations, measuring the time delay and frequency shift of each ping, Inmarsat engineers were able to determine that the plane had flown south, deep into the southern Indian Ocean, one of the most remote, most desolate stretches of water on the entire planet. The search area shifted to a region thousands of miles from where anyone had been looking, an area so remote that the ocean floor had never even been mapped. Some parts of this ocean are deeper than Mount Everest is tall. For 2 years, ships dragged sonar equipment across 46,000 square miles of ocean floor. They mapped underwater mountains, volcanoes, and canyons that no human had ever seen. But they did not find MH370. In January 2017, after spending over $150 million, the official search was suspended. No plane, no answers. And then, 16 months after the disappearance, something washed ashore. July 29, 2015. On a beach on Réunion Island, a tiny French island in the western Indian Ocean, a man was walking along the shore. He found a large piece of debris, covered in barnacles, battered by the ocean. It was a flaperon, a movable part of an aircraft's wing that helps control the plane during flight. Investigators examined it. The serial number matched. It was from MH370, After 508 days of searching, this was the first physical evidence that the plane had crashed into the Indian Ocean. In the months and years that followed, more than 30 pieces of debris washed up on coastlines around the Indian Ocean, beaches in Madagascar, Mozambique, Tanzania, South Africa, pieces of the interior cabin, a fragment of the right wing, parts of the engine cowling. Each piece confirmed the same thing. MH370 had crashed into the southern Indian Ocean. But not a single piece told us why. And the main wreckage, the fuselage, the black boxes, the flight data recorder, the cockpit voice recorder, has never been found. It's still down there, somewhere on the ocean floor, in the dark, in silence, 3 miles underwater. So what happened on that plane? In 10 years, investigators, journalists, pilots, engineers, and governments have examined every possibility. And there are 3 main theories. Theory 1. Mechanical failure. Some experts believe that a catastrophic technical malfunction, like a fire in the electronics bay, could have disabled the plane's communication systems and incapacitated the crew. If a fire filled the cockpit with smoke, the pilots may have turned the plane around, attempting to reach the nearest airport, which would explain the sharp left turn. But as the fire spread, the crew lost consciousness. The plane, now a ghost flight, continued flying on autopilot until it ran out of fuel and crashed into the ocean. It's a comforting theory, an accident, a tragedy, but not intentional. However, most investigators find this theory unlikely. The way the transponder was switched off, the way the plane deliberately flew along radar blind spots, the way it made multiple precise turns. These are not the actions of a plane on fire with an unconscious crew. These are the actions of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Theory 2. Hijacking. Could someone, a passenger or an unknown party, have taken control of the aircraft? Investigators looked into every single passenger on board. 2 passengers were traveling on stolen passports, which immediately raised red flags. But it turned out they were Iranian asylum seekers trying to reach Europe. No connection to terrorism. No other passenger had any known pilot training, aviation knowledge, or motive to hijack the plane. The cargo hold was also examined. The plane was carrying a shipment of lithium-ion batteries, which some speculated could have caused a fire. But there was also a mysterious additional cargo item that Malaysian authorities were reluctant to discuss publicly. Ultimately, no credible evidence of a hijacking has ever been found. Theory 3. Deliberate action by the pilot. This is the theory that most investigators, including the FBI and the Australian Transport Safety Bureau, consider the most likely explanation. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah. After the disappearance, investigators searched his home and examined his personal life. What they found was troubling. His marriage was reportedly falling apart. His wife and children had moved out of the family home. And on his homemade flight simulator, the one he'd built in his bedroom, investigators found something chilling. A simulated flight path that flew west across Malaysia, turned south over the Indian Ocean, and ended in the deep Southern Ocean until the simulated plane ran out of fuel. A flight path almost identical to what MH370 actually did. This was recovered from deleted data on his simulator's hard drive. Zahari had practiced this route. Now, his family and many Malaysians vehemently deny this theory. They say he was a loving father, a passionate pilot, a man who would never do something this horrific. And it's true. There is no suicide note, no confession, no clear motive. The Malaysian government's official investigation in 2018 concluded that the plane's course was changed by manual inputs, but could not determine who made them or why. They officially left the question unanswered. The truth is, we don't know. We may never know. But for the families of the 239 people on that plane, we don't know is not an answer. Imagine getting a phone call telling you your husband, your wife, your child was on a plane that disappeared. And then imagine waiting 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, still waiting. Some families have spent their entire life savings traveling to beaches in the Indian Ocean, looking for debris themselves. A woman named Ghislaine Watralos lost his wife and 2 of his 3 children on MH370. For 10 years, he has fought for answers, filing lawsuits, demanding investigations, refusing to stop. Grace Nathan lost her mother, Ann Daisy. She became a lawyer, partly so she could fight for the truth about what happened. Hundreds of families across China, Malaysia, Australia, India, France still have no closure, no grave to visit, no body to bury, no explanation to accept. Just an empty space where someone they loved used to be. In 2024, 10 years later, a Texas-based company called Ocean Infinity proposed a new search. Using advanced underwater drones and AI-powered sonar technology, they believe they can find the wreckage in a new search area identified by the latest drift analysis. The Malaysian government has expressed willingness to approve the search. If it happens, it could finally answer the question that has haunted the world for a decade. Flight MH370 is the greatest mystery in aviation history. A modern aircraft equipped with the most advanced technology ever built vanished from the face of the Earth with 239 souls on board. We live in a world where you can track a pizza delivery on your phone in real time, but we lost an entire Boeing 777. And in 10 years, despite the largest search in human history, despite satellites and sonar and the combined efforts of 26 nations, we have found pieces of the plane. But we have not found the plane. We have found where it might have gone, but we have not found why. Somewhere at the bottom of the Indian Ocean, 3 miles below the surface, the answers are waiting. The black boxes, the flight recorder, the truth. 239 people boarded a plane on an ordinary night for an ordinary flight, and they never came home. The ocean knows what happened to flight MH370. It just hasn't told us yet. If this story moved you, subscribe and leave a comment for the families still waiting for answers, because they deserve to know.